Some people leave your life, but never really leave your heart. And sometimes, the person you walked away from becomes the only reason you're still standing. Ryan never thought he'd see Claire again. But fate doesn't ask for permission. And what happened in room 214 of Mercy General Hospital changed everything forever. Ryan Callahan was 28 years old and completely alone. Not the kind of alone that comes from an empty apartment or a quiet Friday night. The kind that settles deep in your chest, like something important has been permanently removed and nobody told you how to fill the space. He worked the night shift at Mercy General Hospital as a patient care technician, checking vitals, drawing blood, helping nurses carry the weight of the building. When the hours got long and the hallways got quiet, it wasn't the life he planned, but plans had a way of falling apart when you were Ryan Callahan. 3 years ago, he had a different life. A small house on Birchwood Lane with yellow curtains, a dog named Scout, and a wife named Claire. Claire, who laughed too loudly at her own jokes. Claire, who burned every single thing she tried to cook but never stopped trying. Claire, who loved him with the kind of love that is so steady and warm that you stop noticing it until it's gone. They were 25 when they signed the divorce papers. No dramatic fight, no betrayal, just two young people who had slowly, quietly stopped choosing each other. Or at least that's what Ryan told himself. The truth was simpler and much more painful. He had stopped showing up for her, for them, and by the time he realized what he was losing, she had already let go. He hadn't spoken to Claire in 2 years. He didn't even know she was sick. It was a Tuesday night when Ryan's supervisor asked him to cover room 214. New patient came in through the ER, she said, not looking up from her clipboard. 27-year-old female, acute liver failure. Family is out of state, still traveling. She's alone right now. Ryan nodded, took the chart and pushed open the door. The room was dim. The monitors beeped in that slow, steady rhythm he had learned to find almost calming. There was an IV stand, a thin white blanket, and a woman lying very still in the bed. He looked down at the chart. Claire Ann Callahan. The clipboard nearly slipped from his hands. He looked up. Even through the paleness, even through the hospital gown and the oxygen tube and the exhaustion written across every line of her face, it was her, his Claire, the girl who burned eggs and laughed too loud and once drove 40 minutes in the rain just to bring him soup. When he had a cold, she was asleep. She looked so small. Ryan stood in the doorway for a long moment, unable to move. His chest felt like someone had reached inside and grabbed a fistful of everything he had spent 2 years trying to forget. He quietly walked to her bedside. He checked her vitals with steady hands, even though nothing about him felt steady in that moment. Her blood pressure was low. Her skin was a faint yellow, jaundice from the liver failure. The chart told him she had been deteriorating for 3 weeks before she finally collapsed at work and was brought in by ambulance. She had been sick and struggling and completely alone, and he hadn't known. He hadn't been there. He sat down in the chair beside her bed, told himself it was just to monitor her, and stayed until the sun came up. She woke up just after 6 in the morning. For a moment she simply stared at the ceiling. Then she turned her head and saw him, and her eyes went wide. Ryan, his name in her voice. He had forgotten what that felt like. "Hey," he said softly. "I'm sorry. I work here. I didn't know it was you until I saw the chart. I can have someone else cover your room if you want." Claire stared at him for a long moment. Something moved behind her eyes, something complicated and quiet. "No," she said. "It's okay." They didn't talk about the divorce. They didn't talk about the past. Not that morning. She was weak and tired, and he could see that speaking itself cost her something. So he just sat with her while the morning light crept through the blinds, and he got her water when she needed it. And when the breakfast tray came, he opened the little orange juice carton for her, because her hands were shaking. Too much to do it herself. It was such a small thing. But Claire looked at him when he did it, and her eyes filled with tears she was clearly trying not to shed. "Thank you," she whispered. It was the most painful thank you he had ever heard in his life. Her parents arrived that afternoon, Margaret and Daniel Summers. Ryan had met them a dozen times when he and Claire were married. Margaret had always been warm to him. Daniel had always been politely cold. When they walked in and found Ryan at their daughter's bedside, the room got very still. Margaret's hand went to her mouth. Daniel's jaw tightened. "What is he doing here?" Daniel said, not loudly, but clearly. "Dad." Claire's voice was quiet but firm. "He's been with me all night. He works here." "Please don't." Margaret looked at Ryan with exhausted, grateful eyes. "Thank you," she said softly, "for being with her." Daniel said nothing. He moved to Claire's other side and took her hand, and Ryan understood that was his cue. He stood up, told Claire he'd be back to check on her vitals later, and walked out. In the hallway, he leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. He had walked out of her life once before. That time it was a choice. This time it felt like punishment. What he didn't know, what nobody told him yet, was that Claire's condition was worse than the morning chart had shown. The doctor had spoken to her parents privately. Her liver was failing faster than expected. She needed a transplant. Her blood type was AB negative. The rarest type. The waitlist was long, time was short, and the doctor had quietly said the words that no family ever wants to hear. "We may be looking at weeks, not months." Ryan found out from a nurse, not because anyone told him, but because in a hospital, information moves through walls. AB negative. Weeks, not months. He sat in the break room with a cold cup of coffee and did something he hadn't done in years. He pulled out his phone and looked up live liver donation. A living donor could give a portion of their liver. The liver regenerates. Both donor and recipient could survive. His hands were shaking as he scrolled. He went to the hospital's donor coordination office the next morning before his shift. The woman behind the desk looked at him with the practiced patience of someone who had seen many people walk through that door full of emotion and walk back out when reality set in. "I want to be tested," Ryan said, "for a patient. Claire Callahan, room 214. The woman looked at him. "Are you a family member?" "I'm her ex-husband." A pause. "Sir, I have to be honest with you. The process is extensive. There are medical evaluations, psychological clearances." "I know," Ryan said. "I want to start today." He didn't tell Claire. He didn't tell her parents. He didn't tell anyone because he wasn't doing it to be seen. He was doing it because somewhere in the past 2 years of silence and distance and convincing himself, he was fine. He had understood one thing with perfect, terrible clarity. He had never stopped loving her. The tests took 5 days. During those 5 days, Ryan kept working his shifts. He checked on Claire every night. They talked, really talked, for the first time in years. Small things at first. Her job as a graphic designer, his night shifts, a movie they both saw and loved. Scout the dog, who now lived with his mother. Then bigger things. "I never blamed you," Claire told him one night, her voice thin but steady. "I want you to know that. I got so tired of waiting for you to come back. You were right there, but you were so far away." Ryan sat with his hands in his lap and said nothing for a long time. "I know," he finally said. "I'm sorry, Claire. I'm sorry I made you feel invisible." She looked at him. Her eyes were wet. "You're here now," she said softly. On the 5th day, the transplant coordinator called Ryan into her office. She had a file in front of her. She looked up at him with an expression that told him everything before she spoke a single word. "Mr. Callahan," she said, "you're a match." Ryan nodded slowly. He pressed his lips together. His eyes stung. "Schedule the surgery," he said. They had to tell Claire. Ryan asked to be the one to do it. He came into room 214 that evening after the dinner trays were cleared. Her parents were there. Daniel sat with his arms crossed, but his eyes, Ryan noticed, were red. The man had been crying. Ryan stood at the foot of her bed. He looked at Claire, only at Claire. "I've been tested," he said. "I may be negative. I'm a match, Claire. I'm going to donate part of my liver to you." The room went completely silent. Claire stared at him. The color drained from her already pale face. "Ryan, don't," he said gently. "Don't tell me I don't have to. Don't tell me it's too much. Don't tell me you can wait for someone else. His voice cracked, just slightly, at the edge of the words. "I've already waited long enough to do something that actually matters. Please let me do this." Claire's face broke open. Tears ran down her cheeks, silent and steady. Her mother was crying too. Even Daniel, stoic, cold Daniel, who had never once warmed to Ryan, put his face in his hands and wept quietly in the corner chair. Claire reached out her hand. Ryan walked to her bedside and took it. She held on tight. "You didn't have to come back," she whispered. "I know," he said. "That's why it means something." The surgery was scheduled for that Thursday. The night before, Ryan sat alone in the hospital chapel. He wasn't particularly religious, but it was quiet there and he needed quiet. He thought about the yellow curtains on Birchwood Lane, about Scout barking at the mailbox, about a Sunday morning years ago when Claire had burned the pancakes so badly that the smoke alarm went off, and they had both laughed until they were crying on the kitchen floor. He thought about how you can be sitting right next to someone you love and still be completely gone from them. How silence can be its own kind of abandonment. How the worst regrets aren't the dramatic ones, they're the slow, ordinary ones. The mornings you didn't say "I love you," the evenings you came home distant and distracted. The moment you realized you had been slowly disappearing from someone's life while standing right in front of them. He thought about second chances, whether they were real, whether you could earn them, whether some damage could be undone, or whether the most you could hope for was to do better with whatever came next. He didn't have the answers, but he knew one thing. Tomorrow, a part of him would keep her alive. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. The surgery lasted 7 hours. Ryan woke up in recovery with a dull ache in his side and a nurse checking his blood pressure. His mouth was dry. The ceiling was white. For a moment he didn't remember where he was or why. Then he remembered Claire. She came out of surgery 4 hours after he did. The transplant team reported that her body was responding well. The new liver tissue was integrating. Her numbers were improving. She was going to live. 3 weeks later, Ryan was almost fully recovered. Claire was still in the hospital, getting stronger each day. On a quiet Wednesday afternoon, her mother wheeled her down the hall to the small garden courtyard. Sunlight, a few plastic chairs, a fountain that made a peaceful sound. Ryan was already there, sitting with Scout on his lap. His mother had brought the dog to visit. When Claire saw the dog, she let out a sound that was somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Scout immediately wriggled free and trotted toward her, tail spinning like a helicopter. Claire leaned down carefully, slowly, and buried her face in Scout's fur. Ryan watched her. He didn't say anything about getting back together. He didn't make promises. He didn't rush toward anything. Some things, he had learned, couldn't be rebuilt in a moment. They had to be grown back, slowly, the way a liver regenerates, quietly, steadily, one day at a time. But when Claire finally looked up at him, her eyes bright with tears and something that looked very much like hope, he smiled at her, and she smiled back. And in that small courtyard, with a dog between them and sunlight on their faces and the long, hard road of everything still ahead, it was enough. It was more than enough. Some people walk out of your life not because the love was gone, but because they hadn't yet learned how to stay. The truest thing about love isn't the feeling. It's the choice to show up, to stay, to give, even when it costs you everything. Don't wait until someone is lying in a hospital bed to show them what they mean to you. Subscribe to Soul of Kindness for stories that remind you what truly matters.